Spirit guides. Do they exist? If so, what are they? And more importantly, who are they? Welcome to The Man Who Kept Dying. In the novel, The Man Who Kept Dying, when Mika finds himself on the other side, he encounters spirits that are acting as his guides. Their names are Askayah, Hakuk, and Adonnaï. And to let you in on a little secret, I have taken inspiration from my own spirit guides, and even used their names in the novel. But before revealing who my guides are, let's have a look at what is the role of a spirit guide. First of all, every person on this planet has spirits that are keeping an eye on them. These spirits communicate with us almost constantly, mostly through what we perceive as intuition. And if it wasn't for these spirits, we would run the risk of being trapped forever on Earth. Because remember, your true nature is not to be in human form, it is to be in spirit form. You were in spirit form before you came to Earth, and you came to Earth to experience something specific. And the spirits on the other side that are acting as your guide, they are here to constantly remind you of the blueprint you define for yourself. Because as you know, it's easy to get lost down here. These spirits are also the ones that are welcoming you back when you cross to the other side. And they can be your friends, your relatives, family from this lifetime or from past lifetimes, but they can also be spirits you've just made an agreement with before coming to Earth. And when you yourself are on the other side, back in spirit form, you too can act as a guide for other humans. How cool is that? Well, it also means that you're always busy on the other side and you never really get a rest. But perhaps that's not such a bad thing after all. And I know, I've just opened the door to talk about reincarnation and the true nature of this reality, and I will do specific videos on these topics. But back to spirit guides for now. When writing the novel, I decided to make a nuance between a guardian angel and a spirit guide. At the end of the day, they are the same. But this is what Askayah, who is Mika's guardian angel, explains. A guardian angel follows you from birth to the moment of your very last breath. It only supervises one physical being at a time. A guide, on the other hand, provides temporary assistance when required. Some guides have expertise in specific domains, and sometimes this expertise is required to navigate a difficult passage in your life. You might have one or several guides. This number varies for the aforenamed reasons. There are also rare occasions where a guide will remain with someone for their entire lifetime. Lastly, whereas a guardian angel is dedicated to one incarnated life form, a guide can look after several beings at once. So, you have a guardian angel with you for your entire lifetime, and you have guides that come and go as you evolve. In the novel, Mika discovers that on top of his guardian angel, he's got two guides. To illustrate their role, I thought I would share with you the inspiration behind each of them. And let's start with Askayah, because being Mika's guardian angel is the closest to Mika. And Askayah is a wise, mentoring and watchful spirit. The inspiration behind the Native American spirit is a guided meditation, or a group guided meditation I did shortly before I started to write the novel. And I went to this meditation without any knowledge or knowingness of what the topic of the meditation would be. And as the meditation progressed, I learned that it was about meeting your guardian angel. So during that meditation, as I disconnected from my reality and shifted to the meditative state, I found myself in what I defined to be Northern America many centuries ago. And in the distance I see a waterfall and I have a desire to climb to its top. And this is all described in chapter 8 of the book, by the way, so I won't say much more not to give any spoiler. But in essence, this is when I got to meet with Askayah for the first time. And he revealed to me that he was my guardian angel, and we chatted for a while. And since then, I've accepted that I have a guardian angel and that his name is Askayah. And when I started to write the novel, it made perfect sense to me to use Askayah as Mika's guardian angel. And the main reason being that, as some of you who've read the novel have started to guess, Mika and I are one and the same. Let's move to Hakuk. Hakuk is one of the two spirits that are acting as guides for Mika. She's calm, considerate, and rather serious. She looks like your typical small grey alien, except that her skin color is brown and like she likes wearing kind of a dark navy coat with a high collar. As to the inspiration for Hakuk, well, she came to me in dream state. And one thing you have to know about me is that I have the weirdest dreams possible. And my mind is pretty active during my dream state, and I have an excellent recollection of my dreams. So I even have what I call marathon nights, and these are nights during which I can remember every single one of my dream as well as the transition between each dream. So when I wake up in the morning after these nights, they don't happen too often, but when they do, I feel just so exhausted in the morning. So back to that dream with Hakuk. It was one of those dreams in which I realized that I could modify all the parameters of the dream at will. So I could make things appear or disappear, and yet I was marveling at the fact that I could do so. And in that dream, as I'm walking down a dark cobbled street with no one around, I see a small person walking towards me. And that person is covered in dark clothes and her face is covered as well. So as we cross path, that person turns to me and says with a feminine voice, "Hi, Vincent." And she removes her shawl and I see a little alien looking at me and talking to me, and more specifically addressing me as if she'd known me all my life. And my stupid brain realizes what's happening, panics, and I wake up the next second. You have to realize that despite all the weirdness in my dream, this was the first time that I was seeing an alien in dream state as well as interacting with it or with her. So that was a lot to compute for me. Hakuk appeared in subsequent dreams, and she makes sure not to scare me afterwards. So we had conversations, and she revealed to me that she was one of my guides. She never mentioned her name, but I felt into it when I was writing the novel, and I go into sort of a not meditative state, but calm state, and I just asked the question, what is your name? And the name Hakuk came to me almost instantly. And I thought like it was a good match for the personality of Hakuk for some reason. The name resonates quite well. Mika's second guide is named Adonnaï. And Adonnaï is the opposite of Hakuk. She is ebullient, cheerful, and carefree. She's also a very strange looking being. But the way she appeared to me is even stranger. Because I was taking a walk in a park and I was half lost in my thought, and there was no one around me until the moment I noticed someone walking slightly ahead of me and slightly to my right. So I look at who that person is that I had not noticed before, and I see this blue being floating who looks at me, smiles, laughs, and the next instant vanishes into thin air. So, hang on a second, Vincent. You're telling me that this blue being that is part fish, part snake, part human appeared in front of you and then disappeared. What were you on? Well, the answer to that question is nothing. I was just lost in my thought. And it's interesting because I had read an article many weeks or months before that, but I remember that article. And it was about someone who was saying that one day he was walking down the street and all of a sudden he realizes that is being flanked by two large angels with massive wings. And he said that it made no sense, but he could see them and they did seem real, as real as anything else. I remember reading that part of the article and thinking, well, that's complete BS, it cannot be true. I'm very open-minded to a lot of things, but that I don't believe in. Well, it turns out that Adonnaï wanted to prove me wrong. She didn't say a word, but I was able to pick on her playful energy. So I decided to include her in the novel. And as for her name, Adonnaï, same as Hakuk, I just felt into it and I asked her in half meditative state what her name was. And Adonnaï is the name that instantly came back to me. And she was also very insistent on the spelling and the pronunciation. So when you're reading the book, you now know how to pronounce it correctly. Now, has my stance changed on spirit guides since I finished writing the novel? Well, yes and no is the answer to that question. Because I believe we all have spirits that are keeping an eye on us. But also that these spirits are not necessarily as involved as Askayah, Hakuk and Adonnaï are with Mika. Some spirits might just take an interest in your journey and they will tag along just to observe you and watch how you tackle a specific situation in your life. Other spirits might come more temporarily just to essentially assist you when you're navigating a difficult or highly emotional passage in your life. That would be a very short-term type of assistance from them. But there might also be times when you feel that you have no one around you. And one such time is when you go through what is called the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul happens shortly after awakening. And awakening is when you realize that there's more to life than meets the eye. So you go through an intense clearing process. And in a way, your guides will just take a step back to allow you to go into that clearing process because you are the one best placed to do the cleansing of your own past, if you like. The upside is, once you've gone through your own dark night of the soul, the communication with your guide becomes clearer than ever before. As I explained in my video on intuition, guides communicate with us through feelings mostly or intuition, so it's important to pay attention to them. Nowadays, I've learned to listen into the subtle messages from the other side. But if I'm honest, I'm not paying as much attention as to whom is delivering them as I used to. Whereas in the past, I would be very intent on knowing who those spirit guides were. As a matter of fact, I don't feel that Hakuk or Adonnaï have as direct a guidance as they used to. But I believe they're still watching my journey from afar. I also have no interest in knowing how many guides I have, what their name is, or what they look like. But perhaps that's because I've got too many guides these days, who knows. I just welcome them and listen to what they have to say. And very often, they are just advising me to focus my attention on one particular area or another throughout the day. I also know that one of my grandfathers is often present. And the reason for this is because I cannot mistake his guidance. It's very specific to his life, and I very much recognize his personality as well through the guidance. By the way, there's an important point that I've yet to mention about spirit guides, and I think it's quite an important one. And it is that a spirit guide will never advise you to do anything negative. So if you tune into your spirit guides or feel into the guidance or your intuition or your feelings and you feel like you're receiving guidance that seems negative, dodgy, or not with anyone's best interest at heart, it's unlikely to be coming from a guide. It's more likely to be coming from a spirit of lower consciousness. And the way you can deal with them is simply tell them to go away, and they have to, because that's how powerful you are as a human. But I will do a separate video on negative spirits, so to speak, and who they are, what they are, and how to deal with them. So in conclusion, you are never alone, because at least you always have your guardian angel keeping an eye on you. And although spirit guides cannot physically intervene when you are in an uncomfortable or difficult situation, they will do their best to advise you or to guide you to not get into that situation in the first place. And in a way, it's comforting to know that you are never alone and there's always a support group, although invisible, behind you. But the flip side is, as many people who have become very connected to their guides will tell you, guides have a tendency to provide their guidance at the most random moment. And one such moment would be when you're sitting on the toilet, for example. And that's not really cool. But it doesn't really seem to bother them in the slightest. And you, did you know you had spirit guides? Do you listen to them? Do you know who they are? Do you care to know? Please share your views. And also, by now, do you know the drill? Until next time, be conscious, my friends.